Good morning, hello and welcome to the MSP studios in Bootle for Liverpool Chamber of Commerce's latest strategy event. And this month it is on probably the most pertinent issue affecting businesses as we look forward to the economic recovery from COVID and from Brexit. It's about education, skills and the connections with business, with our schools, higher education and further education institutions. Today we're joined by I think the largest panel that we've had on one of these sessions so far, and it's perhaps appropriate and indicative of the importance of the issue of skills to Liverpool City Region that we're joined by such a prominent and excellent panel. This morning we're going to be discussing the future of Liverpool City Region's education and business partnerships, and we're delighted with the calibre of speakers we bring you today. We're going to introduce you to the panellists now. And we're going to ask them to introduce themselves succinctly because we have so many of them. And we're going to ask them to give us a minute each on where they sit within the education and build and skills ecosystem, whether they're a business, part of the education institution, and what their initial thoughts are on this really important topic. I'm going to introduce you first to Dr. Katie Spall, who's here with me in the studio from Liverpool City Council.
Hi everyone. So my name's Dr. Katie Spall. I'm actually on secondment as a senior manager for Schools Talent Pipeline piece of work for the Liverpool City Council. My role, it involves working with schools and businesses across the city region and national businesses, international businesses, to really bring about some systematic change in how businesses and schools work together. So this is an absolutely perfect topic and platform to bring some of this to light. My role is to generate really more positive destinations and sustainable employment for the young people in the city. With a particular focus, I suppose, on reducing the NEET numbers. Liverpool has high NEET numbers. They are reducing, but it's a key focus of ours to get that number down to national average. And really what we want to do is open up a discussion around generating more opportunities for some of the more vulnerable young people in the city. Those with SEND needs, those young carers, those who maybe are disengaged from education, or maybe those who just haven't had those opportunities presented to them, and raise their aspirations and opportunities.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Katie. That's a really good introduction, and we'll pick up a lot of those themes a bit later. I'd like to introduce Rachael Hennigan from Baird. Rachael, the floor is yours for 1 minute, please.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I'm not quite sure I'll take 1 minute. My name's Rachael Hennigan, and I am fortunate enough to be the Principal and Chief Exec at Baird College. We are based within Liverpool City Region, particularly in Bootle. We are driven by one thing, and that is to make sure that we understand what business needs are, and as a consequence, our students leave with the most appropriate level of skills to get the best jobs and live better lives. So it's really nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Rachael. Lyndsey, Jayne, can I bring you in, please?
Hi, good morning, Paul. Good morning to the panel and everybody watching. So my name is Lyndsey Burkert. I work at Liverpool Hope Business School. I've been there for just over a year now. So my job role is business engagement and employability manager. And I also do a little bit of teaching with our first year undergrad. So quite an involved role on the employability side. My role is kind of to build those sustainable relationships with local businesses. My background is a business school student. So, excuse me, I do know kind of what it takes and what the students are expecting. And it's been really quite a challenging time over the last 12 months to build those relationships, but it's also been a great time to kind of get involved with businesses, you know, online, digitally and virtually. So thanks, Paul, for inviting me today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Sean, welcome back to the panel. A few words from yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. My name's Sean Keys. I'm the Managing Director of Sutcliffe Civil, Structural Engineers, Building Surveyors and Geotechnical Engineers. I'd like to think we're one of the premium engineering consultants in the city. Primary reason for being here today is not for me, it's to actually encourage people around the city and encourage people to educate themselves continually through their life. That's good for business, but most importantly, it's just good for the society that we all live in. So thank you very much, Paul.
Fantastic, Sean. Thank you so much for that introduction, and I think we share those sentiments as well. Jayne Moore, thank you so much for giving up some of your leave time to join us today. Welcome to the panel. Please, the floor is yours.
So my name is Jayne Moore. I'm the founder and chief executive of the More Media group of companies. And I say the group of companies quite puzzled me because it's only since the reaction to lockdown that I have a group of companies. Most people know me as More Media. We're a marketing and PR agency who represent brands across the city region and nationally to raise their voice and raise their aspiration to grow their businesses. Lockdown brought a real challenge because most of my marketing clients disappeared. There was only Sutcliffe and the Chamber who I continued working with at the time throughout the lockdown. And when we returned after the lockdown, we realised that we needed to raise our experience, to raise opportunities for young people. And we launched a couple of other businesses around the e-commerce and handy person service, those kind of things. But then when it came to tackling this issue of graduates and school leavers who've had a real disastrous year over the last 12 months, and their careers have really not had those opportunities to even start, we then looked at becoming a gateway for the government's Kickstarter scheme, and as a gateway provider to training and access to the scheme, we've been able to create job opportunities through some really amazing organisations like Rutherford and Sutcliffe, to name just a few, but really amazing opportunities for young people to take that first step in their career, but at the same time supporting businesses who are coming back from the furlough, coming back from a really turgid time, and being able to then look at how they can reposition in a post-COVID world by bringing in opportunities to give young people a chance to grow their career at the same time as growing their own business. So far, we've had an amazing opportunity to create about 370 jobs. We have 300 live vacancies, which we're recruiting for, and we've got 70 young people placed since January. So it's going really well, and I'm really excited by the opportunity of creating a change in society of how young people are taken into the workplace.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jayne, and we'll pick up some of your points about Kickstarter and the motivation behind what you've done over the past 6 months as we get into the discussion. Thank you so much for the introduction. Maria, thank you for joining us. I think your debut at a Chamber strategy event. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
No worries, thank you, and thank you for having me as well. So yeah, my name's Maria Whittingham. I'm a recruitment specialist at CGI. So CGI, we're a global IT and business consultancy. We have offices nationwide in the UK, including one in Liverpool at the Albert Docks. My role as an early careers recruitment specialist specifically means that I'm involved in our graduate and apprentice recruitment across the UK. And I look after the full recruitment life cycle. So schools and university outreach, actual running of assessment centres, and then onboarding and inductions as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maria. Look forward to talking to you very shortly on all of those things which are so pertinent to the discussion this morning. Lauren, thank you also for making your debut today. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Lauren Evans, and I'm Head of Radiotherapy Innovations in the Radiotherapy Innovations subsidiary of Rutherford Health. Rutherford Health is a network of cancer centres, and we have one in Liverpool. But part of my job role is member of the Rutherford Innovations Senior Leadership and Management Team. I'm responsible for the implementation of research and innovation projects, but also where I'm really active and really engaged in is I'm the lead on the education, training and development for not only our staff, but student engagement within our universities. And it's really important because this work will also take and form the basis of our strategic service development. So that will involve radiotherapy research, chemotherapy, innovation, and also education opportunities that we hold within Rutherford Cancer Care. So it's really exciting to be here and speak to you all.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for the introduction. And to Gill now, who's I think back joining us for one of our events again. Gill, always good to hear from you. The floor is yours, please.
Hi, good morning. My name's Gill Roberts. I work for Morgan Sindall Construction. We're a national main contractor, but we've got a real local presence. So I work predominantly in the Liverpool City Region, delivering social value, which is education, employment, local economy and the environment, making sure that we've got the greatest impact. I work really closely with schools, colleges and universities to ensure that we enhance their curriculum and maybe look at doing things in a different way. We do work placements and work experience and provide apprenticeships. and loads of other things.
Thanks, Jill. And it is loads of other things, isn't it? I'm sure we'll come on to that. And I think it's really clear as well from everyone's initial introductions about schools, colleges, universities. And as we start to look at this as an education system, that's where we need to understand how business can influence future talent and talent pipeline at all points along that education journey, whether it's from primary school right the way through to lifelong learning through individuals' careers. Last but very much not least, I'm really pleased that Jayne Gratton is here to join us from British Chambers of Commerce. I'm going to turn over to Jayne in just a second, but just to re-emphasise, the Liverpool Chamber sits within a network of chambers of commerce in the UK, 53 accredited chambers, all of whom are committed to supporting the policy ambitions of our businesses. And we understand that skills is at the very forefront of business minds. So with that in mind, Jayne is going to talk a little bit about the British Chambers of Commerce Workplace Training and Development Commission report and how that fits into the context of learning and development objectives for businesses, and it'll set a really good context for this morning's discussion. No pressure, Jayne. Over to you, please.
Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be with you. So I'm head of people policy at the British Chambers of Commerce, and over the last several years, businesses have told us that access to skills is a top priority. And in the run-up to the pandemic, 3 in 4 firms were telling us they had hard to fill vacancies, really struggling to recruit the people they need, particularly for technical skilled roles. And yet at the same time, our research showed us that business investment and training had been falling steadily since 2014. And of course, it plummeted during the pandemic. But to find out what was going wrong, BCC convened an independent UK-wide commission on workplace training and development. And we asked it to look at the skills system unashamedly through the eyes of the employer. And what did we find? So some fantastic examples of best practice across regions and sectors, with businesses fully investing in the training and development of young people, involved from primary school right the way through to university, and investing in the adult workforce. And there's a lot that we can learn from these employers and try and scale up this best practice activity across all of our networks. But we also found a much bigger cohort of businesses who rely on recruitment to fill skill shortages and who are to some extent disengaged from the skills system. And we find that these firms need support really to articulate their skills needs and help to find the right training provision and to build trust amongst firms about the skills system. It was also clear that from what firms were telling us that the pace of digital and technological change means that businesses can't simply look to the government to solve skills needs. And the urgency of skills shortages means we can't wait for young people to come through the education system to fill these skills needs. So employers really need to invest in the training and development of adults already in the workplace and to support their people to continuously train and reskill. And so when the Commission looked at all of this evidence, it came up with 5 key recommendations. And one of that was clearly that the government can do more to help employers invest in skills, for example, using the tax system to stimulate investment and creating this more agile and flexible skills system. Well, the key recommendations are that we need to give small firms, SMEs, access to impartial advice and support to really identify what's going on in their workplace, the training needs they have, linked to their growth ambitions and innovation, and help them to access the right training provision at the local level. Secondly, we need more access to digital skills training to support change management and this digitalisation of processes and automation. Thirdly, the Commission said we need more focus on meeting the needs of all adults in the workplace. And this could mean less emphasis on the achievement of full qualifications and more access to flexible and modular units of accredited learning. So we get more people training more often and making them more quickly able to take on new tasks and develop themselves in the workplace. The other recommendation was about ensuring employers have a much stronger role and voice in skills strategy and planning at the local level, and more flexibility for training providers, so that we can ensure that businesses can say what's required and the skills system can provide it at the local level, and that people are actually being trained for the jobs that we can't fill now and for the jobs of the future, and these good jobs, good sustainable jobs that industry will need. And the final recommendations around helping people themselves to invest in their own training and development. So about investing more in the adult education budget to really facilitate lifelong learning and enable people to dip in and out of training, to quickly retrain, move into higher earning roles, particularly lower skilled workers. We found a lot of concern amongst employers around the need to bring everybody with us in the workplace, not just ensuring that people who are already trained and well skilled can continue to grow their skills, that's important, but also making sure we bring everybody with us. So finally, the overall conclusion of the panel of the Skills Commission was that if we're going to solve the skills crisis, employers, government, education and skills providers, they really need to embrace this shared responsibility. They've got to work together to ensure people have the right skills. Chambers of Commerce can play a key role in that, and we at BCC will keep representing our chambers and our chamber members across the country to policymakers. But I look forward to hearing the discussion today and hope that's helped to set a bit of a scene for everyone.
Thank you, Jayne. I think that's a perfect placeholder for us to set the tone. Just some considerations from you, Jayne, just before we listen to the subsequent discussion. In terms of the recommendations of the Commission, to what extent do you expect government and those capable of making decisions in this space, to what extent do you expect the recommendations of the Commission to be listened to and acted upon?
Well, we started the Commission back in 2019. And we had to have a small pause when all chambers, as you know, were really focused their efforts on supporting businesses with the immediate impacts of the pandemic. But throughout this 18-month period, we've been talking to government all the way, sharing our information, our evidence and our emerging recommendations. And it wasn't just chamber members who contributed to this. We brought in, we invited evidence from a wide range of organisations, think tanks and other business representative organisations and LEPs and councils. Everyone, a large range of organisations had input. And so we've spoken to ministers all the way through, and actually in the government's white paper, the FE white paper, we could already see some of the work that the Commission has been doing reflected in those policies that have emerged through the white paper, particularly on the need for firms to have a much stronger voice locally, this need for more modular and flexible working, but there's much more that we can do. And this is really just the start of the 10. We know that some of these things will take time to bring in, but we really think now that government is listening to business, and it's a really good opportunity to get businesses and the education system, the skills providers working together much more effectively.
Thanks, Jayne. What I may do now is I might turn over to Rachael, if I may, and just on the back of what you've just heard from Jayne, how do you evaluate the current relationship between business and education, and what particularly works well, and maybe on the back of what Jayne's just said, what could be improved?
I knew you were going to come to me first, Paul. I just sat here thinking, don't pick me, and now you've picked me as well. Thanks, Jayne. Yeah, hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. Where we are right now from an educational point of view, I would say is quite critical in relation to relationships and partnerships. And if we're going to crack this, something that I do see as a problem, and I'm sure businesses on the call also see it as a problem, if we're going to absolutely crack it, we need to make sure that we all have a hunger to do exactly that. So educational organisations need a hunger and a passion to truly understand what business needs of us. And it's not just a one-off round table discussion, it's a constant relationship, which I'm conscious, obviously, it takes time when people's day job is engineering or something else, and so does need to be a hunger and a real passion. I think at times, you know, it's not a new thing for me, further education, working with business and industry. I think we need to make sure that we get it right. So we need to make sure that we have that constant conversation to understand the skills needs, but not only the skills needs that fall inside qualifications, but those attitudes and attributes that actually don't sit in the qualifications, which are harder to develop. And I think the point that you made, Jayne, in relation to that ability for us to be fleet of foot is quite key around that modularisation and that unitised delivery. Sometimes education can be quite rigid, you know, long qualifications. And through my conversations with industry, they don't necessarily want that. They want us to be able to go in, do a 12-week module, move back out. They don't actually want some people to come to college. They want us to go into them and use their kit and use their expertise. So I think from our point of view, as a further education college, as Baird, we've got a real passion to want to do that. But I think all people around the table need to have that hunger, which is quite a challenging thing when you've got time constraints, and I totally get that. So I hope that answered the question.
That's perfect. That's great, Rachael. I might bring in Sean and Gill for some initial comments there about, you know, a business perspective on that. You know, modular delivery, flexible delivery. Is that what you as businesses are crying out for? And how important is it that we have that dialogue?
I'll jump in there first, if that's okay. So in terms of what Rachael and Jayne have said, 3 to 4 SMEs have had difficulty recruiting staff. We're one of those SMEs. We've still got people that we're looking to recruit. So we've used IMO to recruit several Kickstarters. We've got several more places. And I think, as Rachael was saying, one of the most fundamental things we're looking for is not the next Albert Einstein or old Arab. We're actually looking for somebody with the right attitudes, who's prepared to work. So in terms of the approach needs to be flexible, because we're all different. Every one of us is different. I've got my ways of doing things which are different to others. And at the beginning stage of somebody's career, I think a more formal type of training program, either through an apprenticeship program or something of that nature, is important. But once you get past a certain point in your career, maybe 5 or 6 years on, then a more flexible approach is what's required. So even at my stage in my career now, I'm still doing flexible learning. So I think the approach of a flexible type, modular type approach as you move up your career, but early on in your career, a more formalised structural approach.
Thanks, Sean. Gill, any thoughts yourself?
Yes, just to add to that, from a trade point of view, the conversations I've had with our supply chain SMEs are that they almost feel like when they've completed the college course, they then need to start to train them again. So they're really keen to integrate and to really be part of that training. And I think some of the, such as the T levels that are coming in, I think they'd be really beneficial because they're part of the journey to educate them. One of our supply chain partners has joined up with one of the local colleges. I know from a brickwork point of view, we did a trial with Hugh Baird and Wirral Met College with CITB on brickwork, and it did work really well. We got the buy-in of Keith Walton Brickwork and Cara Brickwork on that, and it really, you get the outcomes that you want. It really is beneficial because they're training them in what they need to know on the job, the current techniques, while the college is doing it from a more maybe textbook point of view. It helps with the life skills as well. That's incredibly important.
Thanks, Gill. Maria, you're on the front line for CGI in terms of the recruitment of students, apprenticeships, and you, as you said, almost the cradle to grave, recruitment and skills considerations. What's your experience of some of the things that we've talked about here?
Yeah, I think we in particular find that the apprenticeship route is really positive. I think definitely there's some areas where we see that students aren't necessarily coming out with the exact skills that we'd need, and we find that kind of training them in a joint up approach, if you like, is probably the best way to do it. So the kind of combination of the work and study tends to work really well, and I think it definitely accelerates people's learning as well. And I actually joined CGI about six and a half years ago on a degree apprenticeship myself. So I've kind of been through that whole process as well as recruiting for the schemes now. And I know for me, I felt like that was something that definitely benefited me as an individual as well. You know, being able to pair the theory that you learn at college just with, you know, being actually in the workplace and being able to put a practical aspect to the theory is always really useful, I think.
Thank you. And Lauren, in your business, obviously at Rutherford, hugely innovative organisation. I think you used the word innovation a few times in your introduction. I suppose this creates additional challenges for you to make sure that your relationship with educational partners is at a level where you're pushing them and they're pushing you in a sort of reciprocal relationship. How does that work well for you, and what kind of improvements are required to keep up with what you need as an innovative organisation?
Oh gosh, it's huge, especially during the COVID scenario, where we haven't been able to have students, for example, radiographers, be on placements in our cancer centres. So we had to come up with a really innovative way of not only engaging, but teaching and still facilitating what we do at the Rutherford. So it's about education, it's about our innovation, and it's about our research projects. So we had to find some really extremely novel ways of coming about using our technology. So it's about having the staff engaged within our centres to be able to share that with the students. And we found it's been extremely beneficial. And we're now reaping the rewards that when we are able to offer student placements within our centres, they have that background, they have that knowledge, so that when they are on the placements, they already have that background, they know what they're doing, their knowledge, they're ready to hit the ground running and engage in the more patient-facing clinical scenarios. So we found it a huge beneficial. And it's mainly down to using what we have, but in an innovative way to engage with students and also businesses and staff in our centres alike.
Jayne Moore, we've had several conversations in the past, of course, about the importance of making sure people are prepared for the world of work, that they have the attitude and aptitude, as Rachael said in her comments. What's your view on, you're relatively new in terms of the delivery element of educational contracted services. What's your perspective on this? What is working well, and why do you feel that now is the time for things like Kickstart, for example, to really make a difference to those relationships between business and education?
Well, I've always had an interesting approach when it comes to placements, because I think in my sector in marketing, it can be quite elitist, because the only way you get a job into marketing is if you can afford to volunteer for an extended period of time. And I've always said that when I was a kid, I couldn't have done that. So my road to marketing was quite a protracted one, even though it's something I'm really good at and really naturally gifted at. So kind of coming at it from the point of view of being able to afford to work for free for 6 months is never a gift I would be able to give. So I've always paid my interns and my volunteers, because if we need them, it's important to me that we pay them. So I suppose Kickstarter gives me that opportunity to create that opportunity for someone, and they get paid. So that is fundamentally right and proper, that we should pay our young people appropriately. But I always found that working with colleges and schools to be quite challenging, because there was never really a structured way for me to access it. And I'd always throw my doors open to any school saying, yes, please, but never found it that easy to do. So through the Kickstarter, I think it is a way for us to be able to integrate, much easier to be able to bring those young people through, because not everyone is a graduate in waiting. There are kids out there, neat kids. I left school at 6 weeks of sixth form, and Macbeth ruined me. So I left with no formal qualifications, off a cluster of GCSEs and A grades, but actually I needed to get into the world of work. So the people who helped me on that journey, that were really significant in my career. So I think where we want to get to is that, yes, university is the path for many, but it's not for all. So being able to provide those alternative routes to work, I think, is really important.
Thanks, Jayne. Lyndsey, I might bring you in at that point, given that we just touched upon university, and in all these conversations, there's always a danger that we venture and create straw men and women, and we make massive generalisations and such. It's interesting, though, isn't it, that maybe for higher education, there's maybe almost a a need to continually prove the employability of students. You know, there's a rhetoric and there's almost a sense and a narrative developing that, you know, graduates in particular aren't prepared for the world of work. Do you feel that that's something that, from your perspective, is accurate? And how do you feel that you, as you know, in Liverpool Hope University, are addressing some of that, and what's working well?
Yeah. So thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, I'd echo Jayne's point, really. I'm probably, in my kind of life cycle, I'm probably a rare person that's done both a formal apprenticeship as a younger adult and then had to go back to university at the age of 34 and do a degree. So I've worked in HE for 15 years, but I did feel I had to go back and formalise some of my qualifications. So I do always seem to get, you know, lots of kind of, you know, students haven't got those skills or they're not able or ready for the world of work. I felt me not having a degree hindered my progress, so I had to go back and get a degree and a master's at a later point in life. So kind of how I adapt my approach and what we've done at Liverpool Hope is we're really starting with the first year students. We're approaching some of those areas that Sean spoke about, those softer skills. We're doing professional writing skills with them in the first year, looking at areas like emotional intelligence, developing those softer skills. So the students get to know themselves and their qualities and their strengths. And then as they go along, they can kind of be coached and mentored in the more those practical skills of some of the areas that Maria deals with, assessment centres. You know, I've got a HR degree, so know HR very, very well. And I've worked in learning development before in a previous role in the private sector. So I try to bring that knowledge and that diversity to the students to also make them understand that this is their responsibility, not just the universities. So what bits can they do as part of their degree programme or interactions with the industry that's really going to set them apart in the market, and also to give them motivation, demystify employability, let them know that this is a lifelong skill. They're going to be in a career path till they're in their 60s. You know, what is it they want to do? And where it used to be quite linear when I was younger and you worked your way up, nowadays it's more of chess moves. So the students have got to be their own advocates. They've got to undertake what Sean said. I'm currently doing some learning as well myself as part of my teaching role. You know, it's about taking yourself and being your own entrepreneur and making sure that your skills and your education is matched to the industry and the sector you want to be in. So we've done a lot of work. You know, we've got a chartered marketing degree. We've got ACCA accreditation or accountancy and finance. We just won, you know, the National Students Awards for that. Our students are absolutely delighted with the level of expertise that we've got at Hope. And being a smaller business school, we do have a diverse demographic of students. So I can have students from the age of 18, 19, right up to the age of 41 on my undergraduate programmes that I'm teaching. So I have to be quite flexible in my assumptions that I know that my students all need the same thing. They clearly don't. And the Liverpool industry in the LCR region is a very dynamic northwest. It's great to be part of that. And I try to give that enthusiasm to the students and say, look at the amount of businesses we've got in the northwest and look at the diversity of job roles that are available. You know, try and keep that talent within the city and help smaller SMEs who maybe haven't got the resource through HR and L&D to kind of plan with us about what's going to fit their business. Is it a summer internship? Is it a year-long placement? Is it a graduate role? So we can make sure that we're creating sustainable relationships with local SMEs and large organisations. And that's a passion of mine overall. And I want to bring, you know, the students on that journey and make sure that they know their own worth and value and they develop the skills to be able to meet the future skills needs.
Thanks, Lyndsey. Really interesting stuff around, again, building on the aptitude and attitude comment earlier, but also you've made reference there to demystifying the world of work prior to, maybe considering what your options in life are, considering what soft skills you need to develop and what technical skills you need to consider as well, and those pathways. Now, I'm going to ask Katie to say a few words now, because I think this is really important when we think about dealing with workplace development, workplace learning, but actually upstream of that almost, how do you actually start to instigate this sort of philosophy into younger people as they come through the school system? Now, Katie, you're working on this project alongside us, which we're really pleased to be involved with. You have an audience. Why don't you give us an oversight of what you want to achieve through this sort of business school engagement work that you're engaged on at the moment?
Okay, there's some really, really good points that have just come out of the discussions there. And I was sort of thinking about the school agenda and thinking way back, because we're talking about developing the workforce when they're in the workforce. And we've talked about Kickstart, which hits mainly the 18 onwards. But what about that opportunity for those young people, and how do we influence that agenda? And I think there is a willingness on the part of schools and businesses to work together. But I think there are a number of factors that are challenges along the way. And one of those challenges is communication. The number of businesses that I've spoken to say we're trying to get into schools, and I think a few of you have said it today, we're trying to get into colleges. It falls on not dead ears, but we don't find the right person to speak to, or we don't make things happen, and that's a challenge. On top of that, I think time is a key, because interestingly, when I speak to schools are saying we don't have the business contacts. And actually, I've done a needs analysis now with all the schools that are involved in the phase 1 of this piece of work. And every single one of them wanted more business contacts. Every single one of them wants to be involved in a network with businesses in the city to take this forward, which is absolutely fantastic to hear, because I'm hearing it from businesses as well. But they all say that it's about time for them as well, because they are tied to a curriculum that they are having to deliver, and it's getting that priority right and that balance right of work and delivering the curriculum, which they're then measured on in the schools. So I also think there is a key bit that seems to be coming out from schools around the type of activity with businesses and what impact that activity actually has. So when we talk about the type of activity, there are different areas that you could have an impact with a young person. And Jayne, you just mentioned there around that opportunity and how you had a different pathway, and not necessarily an easy pathway because you didn't necessarily have the money and the various other things. But our job as businesses, as the City Council, is to inspire some of these young people to raise their aspirations. And the only way we're going to do that is as businesses going into the schools, helping to shape that agenda in the schools in terms of the employability skills that are needed. Because at the moment, the teachers who are teaching the young people, and some of the teachers are hopefully on today, some of the head teachers, but the teachers are teaching the young people, but many of them have only done their degree and gone into teaching and are not necessarily aware of the world of work. They might know about communication, but some of those softer skills that are needed, I think it's about the dialogue we need to create between businesses and schools to really take that forward now and start to develop what can businesses do to help shape that curriculum around the softer skills in schools, and actually show the young people what it is that you're looking for.
Thanks, Katie. Might just Gill, I might come to you at this point if that's okay, because I know you do a lot of work with schools as things stand. I know you've got a fantastic piece of work around getting young women into the industry in particular. How does what Katie says resonate with you in terms of that sort of school engagement, and how the school environment can be used to raise the aspirations of pupils, to make them aware of some of the opportunities that currently exist and will exist in the future?
I don't know where to start on this one. I suppose that we are very much, as a construction industry anyway, we're kind of moving away from the careers fairs, that kind of tick box exercise. The impact is extremely low when you do speak to people who are getting up to school leaving age. They say, I didn't even know anything about construction. Were they even there at the day? I would have been engaged, but I saw like there was lawyers there and that kind of thing, and they just said they walk around collecting pens basically. That's usually what comes out of those. So what we've done as a company is we now have education partnerships that are aligned with the Gatsby benchmark. So we've got 3 of those in place at the moment, and it means that we really engage with that school and put a plan in place for the academic year. The benefit of that is that we make sure that the activities are appropriate to the children that are at the school. I'm working with Leap School at the moment. So for September onwards, we know exactly how we're going to engage with them in the correct way to make sure that those life skills are built. Because if we don't help them build that and recognise that, to build their confidence and their communication skills, by the time they get to school leaving age, that they're not ready to engage with society and to see what opportunities there might be out there.
Gill, do you just a little bit, slight follow up on this? Do you feel that schools are getting themselves into the position where they see employability and future prospects and destination? Are they starting to get into that space? Do you feel generally where the needs of your business, for example, are being listened to and almost implemented into school practice, whether that be curriculum or otherwise? Or is there still maybe an excessive focus, as Katie made reference to, around academic attainment, exam results, etc., and the employability bit almost gets bottom piled? Or is that starting to change?
It's been a difficult year, hasn't it, because of COVID? So there has been more of a need to kind of cram the exams and the curriculum in more than ever. I am finding that this last month now that we've got coming up, that there's a lot of schools clamouring to try and get industry to now engage with the students. But I suppose this is a bad year for us to reflect on. I think colleges, yes, they are engaging more and wanting that link with to enhance the curriculum, like we mentioned before. Some schools are wanting to engage. We've got some virtual work experience, like Insight Days, that are coming up. And one of the schools that I'm working with, they've allowed all of their year 10s, I think it is, to all work from home that day so that they can all log on and all engage properly, because it's a full day and it'd be difficult within the school time scale. So I think people are starting to buy into it.
Thank you. Maria, from your perspective, from CGI, looking at your talent pipeline and what you're looking for potentially from school leavers. Granted, there's other there's pathways beyond school, but where do you stand on this? What would you like schools and the school system, because we should remember that schools are under an enormous amount of pressure with multiple priorities, particularly this year, as Gill has said. But what would you like to see happen, just to nudge the dial a little bit more towards employability and career destination and within that school learning experience?
Yeah, so we do a lot of events with kind of education partners. So we kind of do different events like careers events, presentations and things like that. And definitely kind of more of an integration in that is always good for us. We're kind of happy to attend lots of different things. I think maybe it's sometimes around conflict and priorities. So, for us, obviously as a business, our priority is to engage with the schools and help build up that pipeline of our future leaders and our future generation of the workforce as well. But then there is that, priority from the schools about, their priorities in terms of, exams and the curriculum and things, which is just as important, because without that, we won't have anyone join the organisation later on. I think that, we've kind of touched upon people being, ready for the world of work and kind of brought into that kind of workplace and things. And I think that you can kind of look at it in a couple of different ways. So I think you can look at people kind of, emerging from education, ready for the responsibilities of work, because it is very different to education in the fact that, it's longer days, more responsibilities, different way of working, really. I think sometimes, this can definitely be a personal attitude and that soft skills, which I think we've kind of touched on there, and whether people understand that kind of workplace and things. And I think here, business and education both have a part to play together in setting those expectations about work. So companies offering work experience, giving those insights into their company as early on as possible, to kind of help, with that transition, I think. And then I think the other is whether people, emerging from education have the relevant skills and knowledge for various job opportunities, covering, again, the soft skills, but then job-specific skills such as IT. I think in terms of us and our industry, we'd definitely like to see more of a focus on kind of computer science and computing skills as part of the curriculum. There is a massive skill shortage in the IT industry, and it's a concern for a lot of people. And we find, especially in the recruitment market now, we're competing against companies for the same talent and companies that aren't even, traditionally our competitors, because we're all looking for that digital talent. We're all looking for the same IT skills. and especially at apprentice level, you know, there's fewer candidates with coding skills, and if they have got them, a lot of them have built it in their own time, which is good. So I think a focus on kind of STEM and IT, and I know that there's been a shift towards that from, you know, government and schools and curriculum and things in the last few years, but definitely kind of continuing on that trajectory, because I think that in the long term it will have a massively positive impact.
And so given what Katie said in terms of the approach around schools and working with a group of schools to enhance that, is there an overriding message there then about you know, what Katie said, focus on STEM in particular, integrate the views of business and such? Is there anything else that you would add to that mix?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really important, and also kind of maybe, you know, around a role model piece as well, you know, bringing in kind of current people that have been, you know, through that kind of journey and things, I think is also really important. So no, I'd really echo kind of everything that she said there.
Brilliant. And Lauren, from your perspective, you know, the challenge around digital and digitally enabled young people and the focus on that digital skill as well, I guess, must be really important for your talent pipeline work as well.
Definitely, and the technology that we have to use to treat cancer patients, be it proton beam therapy, radiotherapy, is evolving constantly. So to have that level of understanding in STEM, in technology, it really beds in your knowledge, and we find it paramount that students understand that from an early onset, and then that kind of dictates their education and where they foresee themselves in the workplace.
Thanks, Lauren. Sean, we've talked offline and previously, probably in one of these sessions as well. You know, the challenges in Liverpool and Liverpool City Region are massive in terms of, you know, skills inequalities, attainment. You know, we know a lot of the statistics, and we've discussed them as, you know, offline, as I say. You know, as a firm of your history and calibre and size, there's an inherent challenge, isn't there, around, you know, scale of engagement. You know, you've got, you know, however many schools that exist within Liverpool and Liverpool City Region. You've got a number of colleges, a number of universities, and they all want, you know, some of your time and some of your organisation's, you know, some of your organisation's opportunities for their students. How do you actually, as a firm, how do you think engagement with our educational partners should work? How should it work, and what from your firm and maybe for the wider sector, what do you think are the key to maybe enhancing that partnership working?
So I'll start with, I could spend every working hour sort of giving help to some people come through the industry, and that's not possible. But we try to give as much as humanly possible, really do, because every one of those people starting, everyone on this webinar today was that person. So we all needed somebody to put our arms around them. Sadly, the last 12 months have been really tough for anybody looking for training. In previous years, we give sort of training opportunities to maybe up to 25 youngsters, typically youngsters. Last year, it's virtually impossible to bring somebody in and give them training. How can you give somebody a couple of weeks' work experience to actually understand the world of work? So the last year, there's going to be a generational problem with those kids who've just unfortunately missed out. As I said, my primary focus for this is every so often we get a gem who comes and works for us. But then, as I said, we have a wider responsibility. All the businesses have a wider responsibility to tell our story, as Jayne was saying, tell our story, so people understand that there's an opportunity for those kids. It's worth working hard. They need to get stuck in and, you know, just physically graft, and they'll enjoy it. There's one thing that I've found, this is my opportunity to say it now. It mentioned about IT skills. I currently view IT skills on exactly the same par as maths and English. So when I was at school, you studied maths and English, and your mum said to you, you've got to pass your maths and English, you can't get any job without maths and English. I view IT skills on exactly the same par. And if you're like me, you weren't the best at writing English these days, because you've got such fantastic computers that do spell checks for you. You correct all your spelling mistakes. So IT is massively important. And I think it's not just for the IT industry. Any sort of technological industry such as ours, anything to do with STEM involves IT. I mean, today, this call today is loosely an IT meeting. And you know I've had problems with it in the past, so I'm still learning. But I think we need to focus on IT and maths and English, and we need to encourage all the kids to actually focus and take an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, digital inclusion, digital literacy, it's so, so important, isn't it? And I'm going to pick you up on something that you said there, Sean, as well, which was snuck in there about an obligation. You said the word obligation in there in terms of business. So my question, and I might come to you, Jayne, more if I may, should businesses be compelled in some way to engage with our education partners?
I'm chuckling because I thought about that earlier.
Go on, Sean.
Unfortunately, no, it doesn't work if it's an obligation like that.
Well, that was a question for me. I'm sure get a word in with your mates there, I think Sean's right, though, I've got to be honest. You can compel people to, if it becomes a chore, the kids get nothing out of it. And actually, when you go into schools and you talk to young people, I find I get probably more out than the kids do. I famously to do one at Hope a few years ago. I've never been invited back, so I don't know what I did wrong. Where I went into the room and all the male students came in and sat down, and all the female students sat outside. I kind of went, no one's going to invite you to start your career, ladies. Get in here quick. I think gender balance is a big thing in terms of we have to project and make kids enjoy that experience rather than death by PowerPoint. It's just got to be engaging and give them a flavour of the amazing careers they can have. But I echo the comments of all of the panel this morning about digital skills. My daughter's 13, and through her schooling, I chose her schools by the quality of their IT suites. And then for some reason, the council took them all away. And they were all swept out. And they get one lesson every fortnight in computers. It blows my tiny mind because you can't do any job today, whether it's a receptionist with a VoIP system that transfers globally or through to, marketing and social media, and every job involves computers. And it should be prioritised as important as maths and English. And that's fundamentally where our education systems are failing from primary through to secondary and forward in any area. That's the weakness I think we have. I understand, having done homeschooling, the pressure on teachers. I would never, ever criticise teaching. However, it's the system behind the teachers and the education systems and how they're funded. We also don't have enough IT teachers, which is the problem. Because actually, why would you want to be paid as a teacher if you can go and work for CGI or a much better salary if you're a digital skill person? So fundamentally, we need to shake that all up.
So Katie, enjoyment, not compelling businesses to do it, and a focus upon IT and digital literacy. How quickly? How long have you got?
Well, I think it's interesting because often we look at the young people coming through and they've got lots of IT skills. It's maybe channeling those IT skills and developing those, such as programming and computer science. It's a different type of IT skill that we need to look at. But I think it's quite interesting to pick up when we ask the question about what we should be doing, in terms of what the young people should be doing, yes, it's got to be enjoyable. But actually, we've got to present the opportunities to those young people because they don't, many of them, I mean, if we look in the city of Liverpool, there is a number of worklessness families. So these people aren't getting that inspiration from home. They aren't necessarily getting the inspiration around what the benefits of education are, but actually businesses coming in and lighting a spark with those young people. And Gill said it before, a careers fair is not the way to do that. The young people will go round and many of them will lack the confidence in having those conversations. So what we need to do is think about the involvement that we're actually doing in schools as businesses to highlight the skills that they need and the journey that they need to take, and take those young people on that journey. And the best people to do that our employers and the businesses. Without a doubt, the teachers are in front of them day in, day out. They will, you know, I hope that I've inspired many young people in my time of teaching biology, because I had that passion, and I have students who've come back and said that, but actually I've taught them biology. I've not taught them necessarily the skills that they need to be successful in Rutherford or wherever else. The people who are going to show them that pathway are the businesses, and I think you will bring that enthusiasm, and I have to say that there are different levels of engagement, and I keep using that. Involvement is what we need with businesses, and that is virtual work experiences. It's days in schools where the students get you know, at that spark lit, but then it's offering mentorship opportunities for those young people who have showed that interest or said that they want to. Every school that I've been in the last 2-3 months has said to me that there's gaps. You know, they've got students who want construction, but they haven't got links necessarily in construction. They've got students who want to get into the financial area, but they don't have those business links. So we can bring those links in, connect those students up, inspire those young people, we can start to move the agenda forward.
Thanks, Katie. Now, you know, pulling you behind the curtain here, I know one of our panellists has just put something on the chat about wanting to come in. I can't actually see who it was. Was it you, Lyndsey? Jayne? Yeah. I will defer to whoever wants to come in at that point.
I was typing a bit too quick at first. So I run a pilot project for a charity as a patron that I was involved with, called I Am the Code, a couple of years ago in Liverpool City Region. And I really struggled to engage with schools, and we were offering free digital skills training from kind of year 7, year 8 through right the way through secondary. And we were giving free computers away as part of it. It's a United Nations backed project, and I really struggled to get it off the ground. There was a new director of education came in to help me, and that was great. We got the first pilots off the ground, and then it kind of went away. We struggled to keep the traction here, and that was a couple of £1 million of the computers being given away to our young people to learn coding and STEM subject. So that there are opportunities out there that, as a person in industry, it's not my job to do that, but I was bringing that to the table and really struggled to get it to take traction. So any help that I can get to kind of bring that back to the table, I'd be really welcome to get into schools.
Can I come back into that one?
Of course, Katie.
Just to come, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I think earlier on I said about communication being one of the key difficulties from schools and from businesses. So I think this is where my role in bringing together what I've been working on now for the last 5 months comes into play, because I want to build a business network, and I know the Chamber is very much behind this, and many other businesses that I've already been speaking to. And the schools in phase 1, which is 10 mainstream schools and 2 special educational needs schools, are all on board in coming together and to really start looking at, I'm on secondment, I'm not here for a long period of time. So what I want to do is make this happen so that it then does continue, and that those connections in the schools are built, and that those opportunities for the young people then really do get fostered. And that's what the business network really needs to be all about.
And similarly as well, from our perspective as a chamber, we're the private sector representative organisation for the City Plan Liverpool. The Education Improvement Plan has a number of points, 5 main points, the 5th one being around improving employability and improving that relationship between business, schools and educational institutions. So we're very much at the vanguard of that, and that's why we were so keen to use today's event to talk a little bit about that engagement with schools and, of course, with our other educational institutions. Rachael, could I come back to you at this point, please? You have an aspiration for Hugh Baird to be the best college in the UK by, I think we agreed 2024, 25, something along those lines, which,
so my governor's 20.
Give or take. Obviously, we've done the digital employer forum, and you've heard from 1 or 2 of our panelists this morning about the importance of digital skills as being absolutely imperative for how they operate going forward. Just from a perspective of the college, and you're such an integral part of that skills ecosystem, how do you assess how you can use employability and destination to really drive forward what you're trying to achieve in your college?
I think we've got the vision of the best college in the country in the next 5 years. And what was important to us, it's not just based on what Ofsted tell us or our financial regulations, it's based upon what our stakeholders, such as employers, tell us is the best college in the country. So we've done lots of consultation in relation to that. I think destinations has to be a key measurement. We've probably been evaluated on our performance on achievement rates. So getting students in, getting them on a qualification and getting them to pass. And it has to be more about getting students in, keeping them here on the right qualifications that are developing the right skills that is driven by employers, and then they go into that intended destination and achieve that positive outcome. I think somebody mentioned it before about students leaving organisations, going into employment and then having to retrain to get to that level. I want our students who leave here to go to job interviews, and people in particular sectors see the Hugh Baird College is on their CV and they know without a shadow of a doubt they're going to have to spend less time with that particular student to upskill them, because we've worked with that particular employer to understand their skills needs, and so they're more work ready. Just a couple of things. I think for us as an organisation, it's a strategic priority. So in our new strategic plan, a key strategic priority is employer-driven curriculum. It has to be that. Not just what we deliver, but where we deliver it and who delivers it and how we deliver it. I think we've got lots of little pockets of good things that have taken place. You know, we've spoken work experience, placements. And I think it needs to be more of a strategic focus. Sean touched upon the obligation. Should it be, compelled? And Jayne said, no, it shouldn't be compelled. I would say from an external point of view, colleges and providers are being compelled more in relation to the way that we are funded, but I'm not bothered about that. For us, it's an obligation, because if we're not working with employers in a more robust way, then our students will leave here with not the right skills. And I think, without a shadow of a doubt, that sits heavy on my chest. If a student comes here and doesn't leave with the right skills to get those better jobs and have better lives, then we're not doing our job. So in answer to your question, how are we going to be the best college in the country? Well, we're going to be the best college in the country for our employers, because we're going to truly understand what it is they need. We're going to be fleet of foot, we're going to be flexible, and we're going to have ongoing relationships. So I'll see you in, like I've said to the governor's, 20 years time, but I'm hoping the next 3 years anyway. So.
That's good. It's always good to have a movable feast when it comes to the time for achieving objectives. Just for our audience, we are going to wrap up very, very shortly. We will be sending you in the chat function a link to join the panel, those who can stay on for 10 more minutes, to enable those in the audience to potentially have a conversation with us all offline at the end of the event. So that address will be going in the chat function for anyone in the audience at the moment, and if you'd like to join us, you'd be most welcome. Lyndsey, I just wanted to pick up a couple of final points from yourself, if I may, from a university standpoint. Rachel's just talked about the absolutely critical role that employability and ingrained employability has, and the engagement with businesses. From your perspective, how important is it, and how are you going to achieve it?
Very, and I think we already are, Paul, so I think that's why I just wanted to touch on what Rachael was talking about. I'm quite privileged in my new role at Liverpool Hope Business School to have an embedded slot on the timetable. So this year I've brought in what's called a skills passport that will roll across the next 3 years of the undergraduate life cycle. That's been absolutely phenomenally successful. We've created assessments around those skills. We've also done the things that Jayne was talking about. So I will have to get Jayne in. I'm sorry about that. We've had guest speakers coming in. So not only have I been embedded in the education, I've also brought in key senior people across the city to do a guest speaker talk to talk about their skills and how those particular skills were important to them in their career paths. We did an industry insight week, which was absolutely amazing for our level C students. And even though we've been constrained with the pandemic, we're able to offer out these digital opportunities so all levels of Hope Business School students can join. I know you were kindly one of our guest speakers, Paul, and Connor joined us, one of our alumni. But in the industry week, I was very passionate about bringing in a key senior female leader, which I did from the NHS Finance. We also brought in Liv Housen, Tony Carhill come in and did a guest speaker talk for us, and we had 120 students on that call. So we are able to hit a broad spectrum of students, but we're able to inspire them and raise aspirations, which we were talking about before. The project Kate's involved in, it's absolutely imperative. I've gone and volunteered in primary schools, part of careers carousels, to inspire young people to kind of see what different career paths are out there. And I think it's really important that starts happening in high school. We don't just wait for university or further education, that our students come to us with an understanding of what it is they would like to do. And kind of it's nice to see parts getting joined up again. Obviously, lots of organisations have been working in silos. Colleges have done one thing, high schools have done another, universities have done another. And I think this conversation Kate's creating is bringing those parts together. I know I've offered some support to my daughter's secondary school and their career service because they don't have a big resource. So it's important that they maybe get mentored by universities who have designated career services and can offer some support to secondary schools. So it would be nice if there's a more joined up approach across the city. So I'm delighted to see that employability education is really making a difference for our students and raising their aspirations, and it's making them start to look for those work opportunities a lot sooner. Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant, Lyndsey, thank you so much. Well, I said at the start of the session that we had our biggest panel ever. Miraculously, I think we're just about to keep to time-ish. As I say, we will continue the conversation offline, and any member of the audience is welcome to join us for that. I just wanted to say, express my sincere thanks to all of the panellists who have contributed this morning. It's such an important issue for businesses and indeed for our whole society in Liverpool City Region. It's really important we get it right. There's some really good practice out there. I want to make reference also to the activity of the Careers and Enterprise Company and Growth Platform in this space as well. But we think that there is room for contributions from everyone. And whilst businesses shouldn't be compelled in this space, those that want to do so should do so, because we feel that we all have an obligation, to use Sean's word, to really make a positive difference and a positive improvement to all of our educational institutions. We are all in this together. It's in our best interests to create, foster and nurture and keep outstanding talent in the Liverpool City Region. So as Liverpool Chamber, where, as I said earlier, we feel that we should be at the vanguard of this particular campaign. We really welcome and thank all the panellists who share that ambition, and we really look forward to working with you all, both the panellists and the audience, to make some of this happen. So once again, thank you panellists for participating today. Thank you audience for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next strategy event for Liverpool Chamber and very soon in person. Thank you very much and goodbye.